Money does not wait for you. It moves when you move. Every second you hesitate has a price. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He never worshipped patience. He worshipped timing. Slow men build careful plans. Fast men build fortunes. This is not about recklessness. This is about velocity. 7 laws govern who moves first. Learn them, or keep losing to the second. Here is the uncomfortable truth almost nobody says out loud. Getting rich is not a reward for correctness. It is a reward for speed. The person who acts today, imperfectly, almost always outpaces the person still perfecting a plan for next year. This is not motivation, and it is not a call to hustle harder. This is a warning about a tax you are already paying and have never once seen listed on any statement: the quiet tax of hesitation. Most people believe caution protects their money. It does the opposite. Every day spent deliberating over an already good decision is a day that decision loses value, quietly, invisibly, while you convince yourself you are simply being careful. The world does not wait for you to feel ready. Prices shift. Opportunities close. Someone faster than you steps into the exact space you were still measuring, and by the time you finish measuring it, there is nothing left to step into. Machiavelli never mistook patience for virtue. He watched princes lose entire territories, not because they chose the wrong side of a conflict, but because they took too long choosing any side at all, hoping the danger would resolve itself while they waited to be certain. Indecision, to him, was never neutral. It was already a choice, and almost always the worst one available, because it handed the outcome to whoever else in the room was willing to choose first. This video is not about the obvious mistakes, the reckless bets, the impulsive gambles that dress themselves up as decisiveness and are really just carelessness wearing a faster costume. It is about a far more dangerous trap: quiet, comfortable, entirely respectable hesitation, the kind that feels responsible right up until you actually calculate what it cost you. Nobody warns you about this tax because nobody can see it being collected. It never shows up as a loss. It only shows up as an opportunity that simply stopped existing by the time you were ready to take it. 7 laws. Not about working harder than the person next to you. Not about being smarter than everyone else in the room. About moving while everyone else is still deciding whether moving is even worth the risk. Learn these, and you will never look at a delay the same way again. Law number 1. A decision left unmade still decays. Most people treat an undecided choice as if it were frozen in place, waiting patiently, exactly as valuable tomorrow as it is today, ready to be acted on whenever they finally feel ready. This is a comfortable illusion, and it is completely false. A decision has a half-life, the same way a radioactive isotope does. The moment an opportunity becomes visible to you, its value begins quietly falling, whether you notice or not, whether you act or not, simply because the conditions that made it valuable in the first place are already starting to shift underneath it. Picture 2 investors shown the identical opportunity on the same morning. A promising early-stage business looking for a small group of backers before a public announcement changes everything about its price. The first investor is careful. He wants to run the numbers twice, sleep on it, discuss it with 3 separate advisors before committing a single coin. 2 weeks pass while he does exactly this, diligently, responsibly, exactly as any sensible person would. The second investor spends one afternoon confirming the fundamentals are real, then commits before the week is out. 2 months later, the opportunity both men saw on the same morning has been publicly announced. The price has multiplied several times over, and the terms available to new backers no longer resemble what either man was originally offered. The first investor's caution did not protect him from a bad decision. It simply guaranteed he would only ever be offered the picked-over remainder of a good one. Neither man was reckless. Neither man skipped real diligence. What separated them was never intelligence or information, since both had access to the identical facts on the identical morning. What separated them was how quickly each man converted knowing into acting, and that gap, small as it looked in the moment, was the entire difference between a life-changing return and a mildly interesting story about an opportunity that got away. The mechanism here is simple, and almost nobody accounts for it deliberately. Every opportunity exists inside a window, and that window is closing from the instant it opens, not from some later point you get to choose. Waiting to decide does not preserve the opportunity in its original state for your convenience. It simply spins down the window while you deliberate, and by the time you finally act, you are no longer acting on the opportunity you originally saw. You are acting on whatever smaller, later, worse version of it happens to still be available. This is why a decision must be dated, not just made. The version of an opportunity available on the day you first understood it is never the same version available a month later, even if the offer technically still stands, because the surrounding conditions, the competition, the price, the terms, have all continued moving the entire time you stood, still considering them. A decision you are still holding on to without acting is not a decision preserved. It is a decision quietly rotting in your hands while you wait for a certainty that was never going to arrive before the window closed anyway. Every day you hold an unmade decision, you are not avoiding risk. You are simply choosing, without admitting it, to accept whatever smaller version of the outcome remains once you finally decide. Once you accept that a decision decays the moment it exists, a second, more useful question follows immediately. If every decision is losing value with time, does every decision deserve the same amount of deliberation before you act on it? The answer is no, and confusing the two is where most people quietly waste the most time. Law number 2. Not every door deserves the same deliberation. Most people apply one uniform standard to every choice they face, treating a decision about which restaurant to try tonight with roughly the same caution as a decision about which career to commit the next decade to, and treating a major, hard-to-reverse commitment with roughly the same casual speed as a minor, easily corrected one. Both habits are expensive, but in opposite directions, and almost nobody sorts their decisions before making them. Consider two kinds of doors. Some doors, once you walk through them, lock behind you, and getting back to where you started costs enormous time, money, or reputation, if it is even possible at all. Other doors swing freely in both directions. Walking through them costs you almost nothing if it turns out to be the wrong room, because walking back out is just as easy as walking in. A prince deciding whether to execute a rival correctly treats that decision with enormous, unhurried weight, because the door locks the instant he acts, and there is no reversing it afterward. The same prince deciding whether to test a new tax policy in one province for a single season should move quickly and without excessive ceremony, because if the policy fails, he simply reverses it and loses almost nothing beyond a season's worth of minor friction. Now picture two young professionals, each offered a modest side opportunity, a small freelance project that requires only a few hours and can be abandoned cleanly at any point if it turns out to be a poor fit. The first professional treats this tiny, reversible opportunity like a life-altering commitment, researching it for 3 weeks, drafting pro and con lists, consulting friends, agonizing over a decision that could have simply been tried and discarded if wrong. The second professional says yes within a day, tries it, and either keeps going or walks away cleanly within the month, having lost almost nothing by testing it directly instead of theorizing about it from a distance. Over a single year, the second professional has tested a dozen small opportunities this way, at reversible door speed, while the first professional is still agonizing over the first one, having tested exactly nothing. The mechanism is straightforward once you see it clearly. A reversible decision should be made almost as fast as you can gather the minimum information required to try it, because the true cost of being wrong is trivial, and the true cost of delay, measured against a dozen other doors you never got around to testing, is enormous. An irreversible decision deserves the opposite treatment, genuine patience, real scrutiny, because the true cost of being wrong is not a minor correction. It is a permanent one. The failure almost everyone makes is running both types of decisions through the identical slow, deliberate process, spending the same energy protecting themselves from a locked door and a swinging one, as if the two carried equal weight. This is not an argument for recklessness on the decisions that genuinely matter. It is the opposite. Sorting your decisions by how reversible they actually are frees up the caution you would have wasted on a swinging door and lets you spend it fully on the doors that actually lock behind you, the ones that deserve every ounce of careful thought you have. Treating everything with equal weight does not make you more careful. It makes you careful about the wrong things, in the wrong proportion, at exactly the moment it costs you the most. Sort the door before you sort the decision. Most of what feels like a hard choice is only a swinging door dressed up as a locked one, costing you weeks of hesitation for a mistake that would have cost you nothing to simply walk back out of. Sorting your decisions this way solves one problem. But even a correctly sorted, quickly made decision can still arrive too late if the information behind it has already reached everyone else in the room. Which raises the next, sharper danger. Law number 3. The edge dies the moment everyone can see it. Most people believe that once they discover a genuinely good opportunity, that opportunity simply waits for them, patiently, until they get around to acting on it, as if being right were the same thing as being early. It is not. The value of any private piece of knowledge is directly tied to how few other people currently possess it, and that number only ever moves in one direction, upward, the longer the knowledge sits unacted upon. Picture two merchants who both learn, on the same day and from the same source, that a new trade route is about to open, one that will dramatically cut the cost of shipping a specific good. The first merchant treats this as valuable information worth protecting and considering carefully, quietly researching the route's feasibility for several weeks before committing any capital to exploit it. The second merchant, upon hearing the same news, immediately begins securing contracts and warehouse space along the new route before it is even formally confirmed, moving on the information while it still belongs almost exclusively to him. By the time the first merchant finishes his careful research and finally acts, the route has been publicly announced. A dozen other merchants have already secured the best contracts and the best warehouse space, and the advantage that once belonged uniquely to him now belongs to everyone, which functionally means it belongs to no one at all. This is not a story about who worked harder or who understood the opportunity more deeply. Both merchants understood it identically well. What separated them was how quickly each converted a private edge into a locked-in position before that edge became public knowledge, at which point it stopped being an edge and simply became the price everyone now has to pay to compete at the same starting line as everyone else. The mechanism here deserves to be stated plainly because almost nobody thinks about information this way. Any piece of knowledge that gives you an advantage is only an advantage for as long as it remains scarce. The instant it becomes common knowledge, shared by your competitors, your customers, or the broader market, it converts from an edge into merely the baseline cost of participating at all. This means the true value of any insight is not fixed at the moment you learn it. It is a clock actively ticking down towards 0 the second more than one person knows it, and every day spent deliberating instead of acting is a day spent watching that clock run without you. This is why the advantage almost never belongs to whoever is most correct. It belongs to whoever is most correct and also fastest to convert that correctness into an owned position before the crowd catches up. Being right 2 months before everyone else is worth a fortune. Being right 2 months after everyone else already acted on the identical information is worth almost nothing at all, even though the underlying insight never changed, only the number of people who now also possessed it. An edge is not a possession. It is a lease with an unknown expiration date, and the rent comes due the instant anyone else discovers what you already know. Understanding that an edge decays as it spreads explains why speed matters on the way in. But there is a deeper trap hiding underneath all of this, one that has nothing to do with any specific opportunity at all, and everything to do with what happens the moment you decide to do nothing. Law number 4. Standing still is still a bet. Most people believe that choosing not to act is the safe, neutral option, a kind of pause button that suspends risk entirely while they wait for more clarity before committing to anything. This is one of the most expensive illusions in all of personal finance, because doing nothing is never actually neutral. It is simply a bet, placed by default, on the assumption that conditions will stay favorable to your current position while you wait, an assumption that is rarely examined and even more rarely true. Consider two savers, each holding a modest sum set aside for the future. The first saver, uncomfortable with the uncertainty of any investment, leaves the entire sum sitting untouched in a low-yield account, satisfied that at least the number on the statement is not going down. The second saver puts a portion of the same sum to work in productive assets, accepting real short-term uncertainty in exchange for the chance of real long-term growth. A decade later, the first saver's number on the statement has technically not fallen, but its actual purchasing power, measured against the rising cost of everything that money was ever meant to buy, has quietly eroded the entire time, invisible on the statement itself, because the statement was never designed to show that particular kind of loss. The second saver's balance has moved with genuine volatility along the way, uncomfortable at points, but has grown in real terms far beyond what the first saver's untouched sum could ever produce. The first saver would describe his decade as cautious, as safe, as the responsible choice. In truth, he made an aggressive, all-in bet, just an invisible one, betting his entire future purchasing power on the assumption that leaving money completely idle carries no cost. That bet lost, quietly, every single year, without ever once feeling like a bet was even being placed. This is the mechanism almost nobody names directly. There is no such thing as a truly neutral financial position. Cash sitting idle is not the absence of a decision. It is an active decision to be exposed to the specific risk of erosion, made silently, by default, simply because doing nothing feels like doing nothing. The prince who refuses to fortify his city because fortification feels risky and expensive has not avoided risk. He has simply chosen, by inaction, to bet everything on the siege never arriving, which is a far larger and far less examined bet than the one he was originally trying to avoid. Once you understand that inaction is itself a wager, the entire framing of caution changes. The real question was never whether to take on risk at all, since standing still already commits you to a specific risk, whether you acknowledge it or not. The real question is only ever which risk, examined and deliberately chosen, you are willing to accept, versus which risk, unexamined and quietly accepted by default, is currently being forced on you by your own hesitation. There is no version of doing nothing that costs you nothing. There is only the version where the cost stays hidden long enough that you mistake the absence of visible damage for the absence of any damage at all. This changes how you should think about every decision you have been postponing. But speed is not only valuable for what it captures in a single moment. It is valuable for what it builds over time, in the eyes of everyone watching how you operate. Law number 5. Speed becomes a reputation, and reputation becomes access. Most people think of decisiveness as a private trait, something that only affects the specific decision being made in that specific moment, invisible to anyone outside the room. This badly undersells what fast, reliable action actually does over time. Every quick, well-executed decision is also a signal, observed by the people around you, and that signal compounds into something far more valuable than any single decision ever could on its own. A reputation for being someone worth bringing opportunities to in the first place. Picture two contractors known within the same small circle of property investors. The first contractor is skilled but slow to commit, requiring weeks of back and forth before agreeing to any new project, wanting every detail settled in advance before he will say yes to anything. The second contractor, equally skilled, responds to a serious inquiry within a day, gives a clear answer, and moves immediately once terms are agreed. Within 2 years, the investors in that circle have quietly stopped calling the first contractor first, Not because his work was ever inferior, but because working with him is a slower, more frictional experience every single time, and time, to a busy investor juggling several projects, is worth more than the marginal difference in skill. The second contractor, meanwhile, gets called first on every new project, not always because he is the best available option on paper, but because he is the fastest reliable option, and reliability paired with speed has become his actual product, distinct from the underlying construction work itself. Neither contractor changed his skill level over those 2 years. What changed was the reputation each one built through hundreds of small, repeated decisions about how quickly to respond, and that reputation became a kind of gravity, pulling opportunities toward the fast contractor and quietly pushing them away from the slow one, regardless of the actual quality gap between their finished work. The mechanism deserves to be named plainly, because it explains why speed compounds in a way that a single fast decision never could on its own. People remember how quickly you moved far more vividly than they remember the fine details of what you decided. A pattern of fast, dependable action becomes a kind of currency in itself, one that opens doors a slower person, even a more talented one, will simply never see, because those doors were never advertised publicly in the first place. They were offered privately, first, to whoever the offering party already trusted to move quickly and follow through. This is also why speed and recklessness must never be confused, because the entire value of this reputation depends on the follow-through actually being reliable. A person who moves fast but delivers poorly is not building a reputation for speed. He is building a reputation for being unreliable, which closes exactly the same doors a slow decision-maker never gets to open in the first place. The reputation this law describes belongs only to whoever combines genuine speed with genuine follow-through again and again until the combination itself becomes the thing people are actually buying when they choose to work with you. Every fast decision you make correctly is a deposit into an account most people never realize they are building. Withdraw from it long enough, and it becomes the reason opportunities start arriving before you ever had to go looking for them. Building that kind of reputation requires acting before you feel fully certain, over and over again, which raises the objection almost everyone eventually makes. How are you supposed to move quickly on something you do not yet feel sure about? Law number 6. Certainty arrives after you act, never before. Most people are waiting for a feeling that is never coming, the sensation of being completely certain, all doubts resolved, before they finally commit to a decision. This waiting is not caution. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of where certainty actually comes from, and it guarantees that the moment of feeling ready will always arrive too late to matter, because certainty, in almost every meaningful decision, is not the cause of committed action. It is the result of it. Consider 2 aspiring business owners, each with a genuinely promising idea and the resources to pursue it. The first spends over a year refining the plan, seeking more data, waiting to feel truly confident before opening the doors, treating the feeling of readiness as a precondition that has to arrive first. The second opens within 2 months, imperfectly, with an incomplete plan and a long list of unresolved questions, and simply begins learning from real customers instead of imagined ones. A year later, the second owner has made real mistakes, corrected them in real time, and built a business grounded in actual feedback from actual paying customers. The first owner is still refining a plan that has never once been tested against reality, no closer to the feeling of certainty than he was 12 months earlier, because that feeling was never going to arrive from more planning in the first place. This is the trap hiding underneath most hesitation. Certainty about how a market, a customer, or an opportunity will actually respond cannot be manufactured through analysis alone, no matter how much analysis is applied. It can only be discovered by acting, observing the real result, and adjusting, a process that requires commitment before clarity, not clarity before commitment. The person waiting to feel ready before acting has the sequence backward, and no amount of additional waiting will ever fix a problem caused by getting the order wrong in the first place. The mechanism here is uncomfortable precisely because it removes the excuse most people are quietly relying on. If certainty followed research, then more research would eventually produce it, and waiting would be a reasonable, defensible strategy. But certainty does not follow research past a certain point. It follows action, specifically the feedback that only real action can generate, which means a person who refuses to act until they feel certain has designed a trap for themselves with no exit, since the exit was only ever going to appear on the other side of the very commitment they are refusing to make. This does not mean acting blindly with no information at all. It means recognizing the specific point, usually much earlier than it feels, where additional research has stopped producing genuinely new insight and has started merely producing the comfortable illusion of progress, a way of feeling productive while still avoiding the actual decision. Past that point, every additional week of research is not reducing risk. It is simply relabeling hesitation as diligence. You do not think your way into certainty. You act your way into it, and the entire feeling you were waiting for was on the other side of the decision the whole time, not in front of it. Acting decisively on the way in is only half of the discipline. What you do the moment a decision turns out to be wrong matters just as much, and this final law is the one most people never learn until it has already cost them dearly. Law number 7. Cut losses at the speed you chase gains. Most people who have genuinely mastered moving fast toward an opportunity still freeze completely the moment that same opportunity turns against them, clinging to a losing position with a stubbornness they would never tolerate in themselves on the way in. This asymmetry is one of the most expensive habits in all of decision-making, because a decision that has clearly gone wrong is exactly as time-sensitive as an opportunity that is clearly going right, and treating the two differently guarantees the worst outcome in both directions. Picture two traders who each enter a promising position at the same price on the same day, based on identical reasoning. When the position moves against them both, dropping steadily over several weeks, the first trader holds on, telling himself the market simply has not caught up yet to what he originally saw, unwilling to admit the original reasoning may have been wrong. The second trader, watching the same decline, recognizes within days that the conditions behind his original decision have genuinely changed, and exits decisively, preserving most of his remaining capital to redeploy elsewhere. Months later, the first trader's position has fallen much further, his capital locked into a loss that keeps growing the longer he refuses to act, while the second trader has already redeployed his preserved capital into an entirely new, genuinely promising opportunity, moving on from the first mistake instead of continuing to bleed from it. Both traders were equally decisive entering the position. Only one of them remained equally decisive once the position turned against him, and that single difference, not the original decision itself, was what actually separated a contained mistake from a catastrophic one. The mechanism at work here mirrors everything already covered in this video, applied in the opposite direction. A losing position decays in value the longer it is held, exactly the way an unmade decision decays, exactly the way a private edge decays once it becomes public. The only difference is the direction of the bet. Refusing to exit a clearly failing position quickly is not patience or loyalty to an original idea. It is the identical hesitation already named throughout this entire video, simply wearing a different disguise, one that feels like conviction instead of what it actually is, which is fear of admitting the original decision was wrong. This is why the fastest movers in any field are rarely the ones who never make a bad decision. Nobody, no matter how disciplined, avoids bad decisions entirely. The fastest movers are the ones who recognize a bad decision quickly and exit it with the same speed they used to enter the good ones, refusing to let a single mistake compound into something far larger, simply because admitting it out loud felt uncomfortable in the moment. Speed on the way in without speed on the way out is not decisiveness. It is only half a discipline, and the missing half is usually the more expensive one. The fastest way to lose everything is not moving too quickly. It is moving quickly into a position and then refusing to move at all once that position starts working against you. 7 laws, and every one of them points back to the same uncomfortable center. Money does not reward the person who eventually gets it right. It rewards the person who converts being right into being early, again and again, faster than everyone else deliberating in the same room. A decision decays the moment it exists. Not every door deserves the same caution. An edge dies the instant it becomes common knowledge. Standing still is never actually neutral. Speed becomes a reputation that opens doors patience never will. Certainty arrives after commitment, not before it. And a losing position deserves the same fast hand as a winning one. None of this asks you to be reckless. It asks you to stop mistaking slowness for wisdom, because the two have never actually been the same thing, no matter how comfortable the confusion feels while you are sitting inside it. Machiavelli never believed the world rewarded the most careful prince. He believed it rewarded whoever understood the moment correctly and acted on that understanding before the moment passed to someone else. Wealth obeys the identical law, whether anyone admits it out loud or not. It was never hiding from the cautious. It was simply moving faster than they were willing to follow. Somewhere right now, there is a decision sitting on your desk that you have already made in every way except acting on it. The information is there. The reasoning is sound. Only the moving is missing. If this shifted the way you see money and time, then don't stop here, because what you've heard in this video is only the surface. There are deeper layers to psychology, influence, and wealth that simply can't be explored fully in one video. Not because they don't exist, but because most people aren't ready to hear them. That's why most stay average. If you're not one of them, then subscribe. Because every video here is designed to sharpen your mindset, increase your value, and separate you from the crowd. No fluff, no noise, just strategy. Most people will watch this and move on. A few will stay and change. Decide which one you are.